So we've been talking a lot to appraisers, working appraisers in particular. I've had, Scott Cullen on, Tim Anderson on, Jamie Owen on, Barry Phillips on, a working appraiser down in South Carolina. And we've been really picking the brains a lot of the boots on the ground working appraisers. And guess what? I got another one today. I got not only a boots on the ground appraiser, but someone that is actually serving on the Appraisal Standards Board as well. So I'm excited to have him on the program. Stick around, come on back. You're going to want to hear this one. Hi, this is Brian Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Appraiser eLearning. You need some education? Check us out at appraiserelearning.com and you'll find a lot of stuff. We got a lot of new courses coming down. We're excited about. We've got a couple of conferences coming up. We're super excited. And we got a lot of things that I can't even tell you about going on. But hopefully we'll be making several announcements very soon. With some exciting news. So we're really busy over at Appraiser eLearning. If you want to see what's going on and what it's all about, check us out at appraiserelearning.com. I'm very excited to have my good friend, practicing appraiser, ASB member, just an all-around great guy, Mr. Craig Morley. Craig, welcome to the program. Glad you're here, my friend.
Well, so happy to be here, Brian. Hope you're having a good new year as we are just about 1.5% through the year already.
Boy, we are. It's amazing. I'm going to slip these on. I hope Kim doesn't yell at me already. Let me make that fix real quick. It just shows everybody these are not rehearsed because we don't edit. We very rarely edit. So, Craig, tell my listeners a little bit about Craig Morley, who you are, what it is you do, where you're located. Let them know.
Yeah, so as you've indicated, I'm Craig Morley. I'm a certified general appraiser. We live down in southern Utah, so we're like 6 miles from the Arizona border, and we do work in Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. I've been appraising since the early 1980s. And have been in southern Utah since 1985. And we do all kinds of work. When I first started, there were 2 of us, and we've grown to where we have 8 full-time appraisers, 4 full-time staff, and we do just about every kind of assignment that you can imagine. And so it's been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of interesting experiences, and so happy to visit.
Yeah, so Craig, you're a commercial appraiser as well as residential. I mean, you guys do commercial appraising, but you do a lot of residential appraising too. So what have you guys, I've had some residential appraisers on the program lately. We've talked about the economic climate and how that's affected the housing sector. And quite frankly, how it's really tremendously impacted the residential appraiser. What are you guys doing right now in the world of residential appraising? What are your residential appraisers doing? Have they slowed down substantially? Are they taking some time off? Or are you guys beating the bushes trying to do non-lender work right now? Tell my listeners a little bit about what's going on in your firm with regard to the residential products.
Yes, or a lot like I think many of the residential appraisers around the country, our work volume has slowed down dramatically, particularly on the residential mortgage origination. We normally have an office meeting every Monday morning, and we were looking at some of the statistics, and we've almost nationally have had like a perfect storm where the number of refinances have dropped down to next to nothing, and purchases have dropped down to a significantly lower level than what they have been in the past. And so those who, and we've always kind of found this to be the case, is the appraisers who build their business on mortgage lending appraising have a lot more volatility than the folks that do a little broader range of appraisal assignments. And So we managed to continue to stay busy with doing some of the estate work, divorce work, litigation work in the residential environment, which helps to round some of that out. And I think from a practical standpoint, uh, if you aren't accustomed to doing that kind of work, the biggest concern that we oftentimes see is that people don't develop an appropriate scope of work, and they don't convey their assignment results appropriately because they're not accustomed to writing the kinds of reports necessary to accommodate these various kinds of intended use and intended users. But that has been something that we have done. One of our appraisers recently sent out just a large number of emails to the real estate community saying, listen, we're in a position where markets are volatile, they're changing, and that if you need some help uh, developing some listing valuation, let us know, and maybe we can be the bad guy in terms of helping your clients recognize the current state of the market. And we've had we've gotten probably 10 or 15 assignments from those kinds of activities, that helping our fellow real estate brethren and getting the getting them to get their properties priced where they need to be able to affect a purchase on their property.
Wow, wow, that's incredible. I mean, that's a pretty good return, having a conversation and getting that many orders as a consequence. You know, one of my appraisers and I did that. We went down to a brokerage firm in Tennessee and took them some donuts and had a conversation and talked about ANSI and talked about FHA repair inspections, inspection requirement, repair requirements, or just reporting issues. And it went very well. We're scheduled to go down to another firm. We had to delay that. They called and wanted us to delay a week, and I think I had a conflict, so we'll delay a couple of weeks. But we're going again to another firm at the end of January. We're planning on talking to some attorney, law firms and meetings like that, because we're trying to start really capitalizing on the litigation arena again. And we got a couple of other things we're cooking. You know, I talked to one of my residential appraisers last night, and he said, I think I can weather the storm. If this thing lasts about a year. And I said, no, we're not going to weather a storm for a year. Now, it could last a year. I mean, it could be a slowdown for a year. God, I hope it's not, Craig. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm not going to just sit around and wait for the fax machine to ring. We don't use fax machines anymore, but we used to, right? And so we're going to be proactive. We're going to find other avenues to go down. We're going to go grab that work that's available out there, and there is work available out there. You got to just go shake the trees. I wrote a course many years ago called Diversifying Your Practice. You'll notice I didn't say diversifying your appraisal practice. I said diversifying your practice. And then I have a subtitle, Inside and Out. So inside your appraisal practice and outside your appraisal practice. I'm teaching that in February down in Texas, in February for the ATA. And we teach it at Appraiser eLearning all the time. So if you need that course, check it out. But we talked about the interest rates going up before there was ever a hint of the interest rates going up. I had that slide probably 2 years ago in the Power Deck. So we knew it was going to come at some point in time. And so it's exciting to hear some of the things that you folks have done and what has worked for you. What are your thoughts on this, Craig? I mean, are we looking, I know no one has a crystal ball that they can look in and tell the listener right now who is dying to know, when's this thing going to turn around? Do I need to get a part-time job, or do I need to hold on a little bit longer and boom, the phone's going to ring again, emails are going to be blasting again? What is your thoughts? Are we talking, another month or two? Are we talking about another quarter or two? Are we talking about another year or two? What are your thoughts with when we can see, maybe not back how it was 6 months ago, but at least something? I mean, appraisers right now are saying, give me an order or two and I'd be happy. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be a quarter or two, I think. And and our market may be a little bit different. than others, but there's a buyer psychology, right? I mean, buyers, many of your baby boomers have never seen interest rates outside of 4 or 5%, and or not baby, but
Millennials.
you're younger, yeah, not
Yeah.
yeah. I have. I mean, the first home we bought, interest rates were nuts, but. And so I remember the day when they came down to 12%, and we were so excited that now we can finally get stuff to move. And, we get to 6.5% and people are having a heart attack. And so, from a long-term standpoint, 6.5% is a pretty reasonable rate.
It's a great rate. It's a great rate, historically speaking.
But I think a lot of, there's a buyer mentality that, gee, a year or two ago, we were at 3% and now we're double that. It's hard to get your mind around the idea that that's a reasonable rate. And so I think you've had a lot of people that are sitting on the sidelines that are waiting for this, a higher level of certainty to come back into the marketplace. And it doesn't help when the feds are suggesting they're going to do another rate hike at their next meeting. And so, yeah, it's not ideal, but and I think that prices are coming down. And if you listen to the media, we're in free fall. That's clearly not the case. But the reality is that if I'm a buyer, I'm going to probably want to wait. I don't want to buy property and then have it decline in value significantly after I buy it. And I think you've got a lot of people that are sitting on the sidelines waiting. There's still demand. The market characteristics are completely different now than they were back in 2007 and 2008 when we had huge inventories. Buyer qualifications were much looser. If you're a self-employed person who's tried to go borrow money over the past couple of years, it's not a picnic. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're in a much healthier environment now than we were before. So I don't expect to see the same kind of reaction in terms of pricing. But let's face it, in our market last year, we saw nearly a 30% year-over-year increase. If prices dropped 30%, we'd be back to what they were a year and a half ago, and that wouldn't be all bad.
Right.
And so we have seen declines. But I think the reality is that coming into the second quarter of 2023, we'll probably start to see an uptick in sales volume. And you're not going to see a lot of refining going on. But I was talking to a title guy the other day, and he's saying what normally happens is that people start living off their credit cards as we get into some of these difficult situations. And those people that have owned their homes for a while still have some equity. And so you'll probably begin to see some kind of second mortgage activity take place. And you'll begin to see a little bit more increase in some of the appraisals for some of these home equity loans. We've seen a little bit of that. And so I think that we've got another couple of months where things will be tough, and then it should start to loosen up a little bit. And we think you're going to see some increased activity take place coming into that second quarter of 2023.
Okay, great. So second quarter, that's, we got to get through March, right? And then maybe come April or so, we start seeing it go up. And I try to remain optimistic. I like to think maybe it's going to spike up a little bit before then, but you may be right. It might be second quarter. Hey, second quarter be better than third quarter, right? Or all year. I'll take it. But we're trying to do things. Quite frankly, we should have done some of these things before as well. We've diverted. I personally, obviously, I teach classes, I write curriculums, I lecture, I do appraisals, I do consulting. I do ad valorem tax appeal. There's a wide variety of things that I do, and thank God, because I taught live classes in about 5 states or so, and COVID hit. And if that was my entire business model, COVID would have put me out of business. I mean, I would have been done. But I did some other things that, this one really hit bad. I mean, bad. But now over here, I've got other things I'm doing that can kind of supplement that. Sell a little real estate, you know. So me personally, I've been diversified for a long, long time, but I probably should have done that more so on the valuation side as well. And we do. We just finished a house, a single family house, for insurance purposes. And this is a client that we do quite. You know, this is one, two, three. I think the third one we've done in the last several months. One was commercial, two were residential. And so we enjoy that kind of work. We charge substantially more for that type of work. It's retrospective, right? The day before the fire burned it. And so we do a variety of that, but we should really seek out more and more and more of that, and that's what we're doing now. So yeah. Now, Craig, you have various jobs. One of your job is working for the Appraisal Foundation. I mean, talk about that a little bit. You are presently serving on the Appraisal Standards Board. So let the listeners know a little bit about what that entails. What do you have to do as a director of the Appraisal Standards Board?
You know, it's been an interesting experience. I'm in my second year. Well, we're moving into the third year of serving on the Appraisal Standards Board. And it's really been an unprecedented situation to go on. This is really the first time that we've had the existing standards remain in place without any changes for as long as it has been. And over the years, we've had lots of feedback come in saying, would you guys quit changing standards? You know, we're tired of having the standards change every time we turn around. And usually it's accompanied with quit changing standards, but before you do, make this change here.
Make this one I want, yeah.
Yeah, if you'll change this one, then quit changing. And, you know, clearly we've just released the fourth exposure draft. And are actively soliciting comments back from appraisers to be able to provide their feedback on some of this. And you know, one of the things that we find is that we're grateful for all of the feedback. You know, my recommendation is if you want it to be as effective as possible, have it be respectful. You know, we've gotten some things that are just, it's like, really. The other thing is that go in, and if there's an element within the document that you agree with, or we like to get feedback from people saying, hey, we like this, we don't care for that, and be specific. You know, if there's something that you want to see change, go in and say, hey, on line 185 it says this, we think that's a mistake. Now, I would hope that your listeners would recognize that we have spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours going through these documents, and every word is considered. And is this a word that's consistent with the rest of the document? Is this the appropriate word? Is there a better word that ought to be used? You would not believe the amount of time that goes in, and we've got attorneys that are going through these documents. And we're in some new ground for many people as we start talking about things like disparate impact and so forth. You know, those are things we have not worried about in the past. Mm-hmm. And yet, you know, I think a lot of times as appraisers, we're looking at it and saying, well, gee, are we exposing ourselves to additional liability by having some of these things brought up within the framework of our standards?
Right.
You know, the reality is that they are already there. You are already subject to fair housing and whatever other laws that may apply. If we're ignorant to what those obligations are, we are just more likely to put ourselves in the crosshairs because we haven't been as aware of those obligations that we have. And so realistically, what we're hoping is that by bringing those to the forefront, we're trying to make sure that we can maintain that public trust, that the public trusts appraisers to act within the ethical obligations that they should be. And we're trying to craft a document that will help appraisers understand those obligations as well as the public and try to regain some of the trust that I think has been compromised by many of the allegations that have been placed out there, right or wrong. That they're out there, and we need to try to make sure that people have confidence that when you get a professional appraiser to do an assignment, that they're going to act within the framework of their ethical obligations.
Yeah. So I want to pause you right here for a second because there's a whole lot that I want to talk about with this. But before we go any further, what I'd like to do is show the viewers, if somebody's watching, how they can get access to that exposure draft, right? And then I want to talk about what is an exposure draft, because there might be some that not familiar with that term, right? So let me share my screen here real quick. And I want to show my viewers, and if you're a listener, I'll try and walk you through this via the podcast audio only, right? But if you're a viewer, you can watch us over on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search Appraiser eLearning, and you'll be able to see the video of this podcast, right? So for my listeners, you go to the Appraisal Foundation's website, and that can be found at appraisalfoundation.org, right? Appraisalfoundation.org. When you get to the home screen, it looks like this. If you're looking, there's tabs across the top. It says About Us, Standards, Qualifications, Resources, Events, Stores, and News. And I'd recommend you get familiar with this website. There's a lot of information on the website and resources for you as a practicing appraiser. But I'm going to go to the tab that says Standards and Qualifications. And all I got to do is point to it, and you have drop-down menus. The first one says Appraisal Standards, then Qualification Criteria. And man, there's a lot of good information there. If you want to know what the real property criteria is, real property appraiser criteria, there's a tab there for PARIA. But if I go down to the last tab, it's Exposure and Discussion Drafts. And I'm going to click on that. And then right down about midway, you can see on December the 13th, 2022, the ASB released the fourth exposure draft to the proposed changes to USPAP. And that's really what an exposure draft is. It's taking the proposed changes to the current edition of USPAP, and it's preparing a document called an exposure draft. This is number 4, by the way. And it highlights what the proposed changes are. And so you can see these on my screen right now. It's a 52-page document, and it goes through and explains the proposed changes. If you see a strike through, that is a proposal of text they're recommending to remove from uniform standards. And if you see an underline, some folks call it an underscore, that's proposed language they're talking about adding to USPAP. So guys, you can get a sneak peek of all the proposed changes, both the deletions as well as the insertion to the new document, or the document that will ultimately be our new USPAP, right? So here's a lot of underlines here. Here's some strike throughs here. And so I recommend you get on the Appraisal Foundation website, you pull up this exposure draft, and you put your eyes on it. And if you like it, great. If you don't like it, let the folks at the ASB know. Craig, you guys really want to know what the appraiser's opinions are relative to these proposed changes, don't you?
Absolutely. The last thing that we want to do is to have changes that have an adverse impact on us as appraiser professionals. And getting that perspective and those feedback, these are some fairly significant changes or alterations from what we've had in the past. And we would like to make sure that if you like it, great. If you don't, let us know what they are. And the more specific you can be, the better off it is, because kind of the general, we're not discriminating. Why do we need this non-discrimination section within the ethics rule? Well, be specific. Let's not. The general broad sweeping comments are fine, and we recognize there's many people out there that have concerns about that. But the reality is that if you've got better alternatives, so if we don't do that, what should we do? If you've got additional language or things, suggest it. And we get some very thoughtful comments that come in that oftentimes end up with resulting in changes that are made to the document by some insightful person that has seen a fatal flaw that we managed to miss. But there's a lot of effort that goes in to put these out, and we're hopeful that we can get this thing as right as it can be.
What's interesting, and I don't think the appraisal community really realizes this. One individual can impact change. I mean, one person can write a letter to you guys, articulate their position, and you're going to look at that and say, why didn't we think of that? That makes perfect sense. We didn't think about a domino effect. We didn't think about unintended consequences if we went this way instead of this way. And this person really makes a case. Let's change the potential change. That's happened numerous times. And so I want to encourage the appraisal community to get involved. Even if you're not a member of an association, I want you to be. Even if you're not a member of a state association, I want you to be. But even if you're just sitting there in your den where you work independently, you can help shape the future of the appraisal profession. Write a letter, let them know, and they may adopt that. And that's how much power you have as an individual. So I would encourage folks to do that. So, Craig, what's your thoughts? Do you think, is this it? Is the fourth exposure draft? Are we going to see a fifth exposure draft, or are we done with four? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is the first time we've ever gone to a fourth exposure draft. So if we went to a fifth, it would be a record number of exposures. We hope that we've got something that can be adopted, but we never say never. We want to have a completely open mind in looking at all of the feedback, and if we had to go for another one, we would do that. But sure, we're hoping that with all of the feedback that we've gotten, that we hope we're pretty close. And so I guess we'll find out. We'll be having a public meeting here before too long, and we'd invite all of you to come and listen and participate and send a little chat question if you have questions about things. And I think as you participate in that, it certainly gives you a much better idea as to why things are being proposed the way they are. And it might help to alleviate some of the knee-jerk reactions that we have as we read through this stuff and say, well, what on earth are these guys thinking with that?
Right.
And it helps get that perspective.
When will the new USPAP be effective? And you may not know, or you might not be able to say, but are we looking at 2024? Is it reasonable?
That would be the hope. That would be the hope. I mean, that is the goal. Whether or not it happens depends on the comments that we get back, and as we get through that adoption process, it takes time to get these things adopted, and the stuff that goes on behind the scenes are we've got to get all the USPAP instructors updated with all of the revisions that have been made, and we are planning to provide some guidance because we're charting some new territory in some areas where there's going to need to be some guidance on some of this some of these changes. And so we're right in the middle of going through and trying to figure out what does that guidance look like. Once if this is adopted, how do we help people understand the actual implication of some of these things? And so there will be a lot of behind the scenes work going on to try to solve some of those issues.
Right. And it's a major undertaking, guys, to really get this thing published. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, this is January, Brian. They've got a whole year. No, because you've got to get this stuff finalized probably by April, May at the latest, because then you gotta get all the content in the book. You gotta write it. You gotta double check it. You gotta correct any typo. Then, as Craig said, you gotta train the USPAP instructors. That normally has to be done, as quickly as possible in order for you to have it print and ready by October, November, somewhere in there. If it becomes effective January, you want to be able to have it offered in December or November. So time is of the essence. There's not a lot of time if this thing is going to be effective January 1st of 2024. So, and I think we need it to be. We've extended the current edition a couple times now, and it would be a little disheartening to see it extended again. But to your point, if it's not ready, it's not ready. It's kind of like baking that cake. You don't want to take it out of the oven too soon. Greg, thank you so much for being here today. I know you travel around the country a lot. Where could somebody find you live and in person? Where's your travels going to take you in the next several months?
Well, as you well know, I've been involved with the National Association of Appraisers. It's a great organization, and if you're looking to find a low-cost alternative to find an association to get some benefits from, NAA is it. And we've got the ACTS conference in California coming up this spring, and I'm going to be there. Great. And so I'm looking forward to that. In February, we're going to be in Washington, D.C. working on just what we've been talking about. So we'll have a live meeting trying to go through and try to get some of those issues resolved. But the next place is in California, and looking forward to participating in that great event.
Very good. Yeah, and if any of the listeners want to check that out, you can go to appraisersconference.net and find out all kinds of good information about the ACTS conference. ACTS, A-C-T-S, stands for the Appraisers Conference and Trade Show, and that's April 1st through the 4th, 2023 in Sacramento, California. We do expect that thing to sell out, so you probably need to look at registering right away. That is hosted by the National Association of Appraisers, as well as their co-host, Appraiser eLearning. And I'm very proud to be affiliated with that, really both sides of that. You can also go to NA Appraisers website, naappraisers.org, find information about the National Association of Appraisers. And from there, you could hit the events tab, and then that'll click you right onto ACTS. That'll take you to the appraisersconference.net landing page, where, again, the schedule's on there, approvals on there. We have a trainee day. If you're a trainee and want to get involved, you can attend the trainee event. We'd love to see you in Sacramento, California in April. Craig, thank you so much for being here. If someone wants to reach out to you directly and talk to you personally, what's the best way to reach you?
My email is about as easy as anything. It's valuepro@gmail.com. There's no E in value, so it's just VALUPRO@gmail.com. Love to hear from anyone that would like to reach out, and always fun to get to know some of our fellow appraisers from all over the place. That's just enjoyable to me.
And you can find Craig, quite often in Clubhouse. You're floating around the club all the time. So real estate appraisal talk on the Clubhouse app. Craig Morley's there often as well. And we appreciate your commitment to joining in and offering your wisdom to aspiring appraisers and existing appraisers. Thank you for all you do, Mr. Craig Morley.
Thank you, Brian. I look forward to seeing you live and in person.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast. We're glad you're here. We hope you're doing well, hanging on, trying to find ways to make more and more money, maybe obtain some new clients or skill sets. We hope to see you in California at the ACTS conference. Please, until then, be safe, make some money, stay out of trouble. All this spare time you have, don't be getting yourself in trouble. I'm your host, Brian Reynolds, for Craig Morley. Until next time, happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update Podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.